The summer heat in dusty, forgotten Arizona doesn't just raise the temperature, it shortens fuses. It bakes the patience right out of people, leaving behind a brittle, irritable core. In a tiny, sun-bleached trailer park outside of Kingman, the air wasn't just hot, it was thick with tension. This is where our story truly begins, not on the open highway where the Bandidos MC usually rides, but inside the suffocating walls of trailer lot 47. Inside that trailer lived a 10-year-old girl named Ellie. Ellie wasn't a child of privilege, but she was a child of quiet strength, a resilience forged by necessity. Her mother, perpetually worn down by long shifts and the relentless cycle of poverty, had recently married a man named Roy. Roy wasn't a monster in the classic sense, but he was a bully, a man whose masculinity was directly proportional to the fear he could instill in those weaker than him. And in that stifling trailer, that meant Ellie and her mother. The sound that first caught the attention of the Bandidos MC was not the roar of their own engines, but a high-pitched, desperate sound that cut through the silence of the afternoon. It was the sound of a shattering plate, quickly followed by a man's voice, booming and vicious, echoing off the thin aluminum walls of the trailer. "Shut up, girl!" Roy yelled, his words carrying a heavy threat that hung in the air like the humidity. This was the kind of noise the police in Kingman had heard 100 times and usually dismissed as just a domestic dispute, a problem that would sort itself out, or one too messy to touch. But the men who heard it weren't local police. They were the Bandidos MC chapter president Hammer leading his crew, Vex, the quiet, analytical vice president, and Ghost, the club's large, imposing sergeant-at-arms. They had stopped at a roadside diner across the street for a quick meal before continuing their run across the state. They weren't looking for trouble. In fact, they were doing their best to keep a low profile after a particularly nasty incident involving a rival club 50 miles back. Hammer, a man built like an oak tree with a gaze that could melt steel, didn't flinch at the shouting, but he noticed the way Ellie's small figure, framed by the tattered window curtains, recoiled sharply from the sound. Hammer had seen abuse before. He'd seen the aftermath. He knew the look of a trapped animal in the eyes of a child, and it was a look that triggered something primal in him, something that transcended the club's strict code of non-interference with civilian affairs, unless, of course, a line was crossed. And yelling at a child to shut up was crossing the line for Hammer. It was the sound of someone using their size and power unfairly. Vex, observing the scene, saw the way the neighbors pointedly avoided looking at Trailer 47, closing their blinds and turning up their televisions, choosing self-preservation over compassion. The system was failing Ellie, not through malicious intent, but through simple, callous indifference. The outlaws were about to become the only law that mattered. Hammer walked across the dusty lot, his boots crunching on the gravel, the sound strangely loud in the oppressive silence. Vex and Ghost followed, their presence a silent, undeniable force. They didn't knock. When you're dealing with a situation this volatile, a formal knock can give the abuser time to hide the evidence and coach the victims. Instead, Ghost simply leaned his massive shoulder against the flimsy door. There was a sickening crack of splintering wood, and the door swung inward. The scene inside was chaotic. Roy was standing over Ellie, his face contorted in a mask of petty rage. Ellie's mother was trying desperately to mediate, her voice a frightened whimper. The broken plate lay in pieces on the linoleum floor. Roy froze, turning toward the massive leather-clad figures filling his doorway. The instant fear in Roy's eyes was palpable. He wasn't afraid of the police. He was afraid of judgment delivered by men who operated outside the official rulebook, men whose reputation for delivering justice on their own terms preceded them. "What the hell do you want?" Roy stammered, trying to puff up his chest, but failing miserably. Hammer didn't raise his voice. His tone was low, deadly calm, and infinitely more menacing than any shout. "We want to know why you're yelling at the kid. That's none of your damn business. This is my house, my family," Roy protested, retreating a step toward the kitchen counter. "It became our business the moment you crossed the line," Vex interjected, his voice surprisingly gentle yet firm as he stepped closer to Ellie's mother. "Are you okay, Mom?" Ellie's mother, seeing the sincerity in the eyes of the outlaw VP, burst into tears and nodded, unable to speak. The emotional focus shifted. The Bandidos weren't there to fight. They were there to protect. Ghost, without saying a word, moved toward Ellie, kneeling down slowly until he was eye level with the terrified girl. He pulled a pristine, untouched Kit Kat bar from a hidden pocket in his vest and offered it to her. It was a small gesture, but it broke the tension. Ellie took the candy, her hand shaking slightly, and for the first time she looked up at the giant man with something other than fear. She saw safety. Hammer turned his full attention back to Roy. He didn't issue threats of violence, which Roy likely expected. Instead, he issued a chilling ultimatum rooted in the social contract of the outlaw world. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. Not hers, not her mother's, yours. You will walk out that door, you will not look back, and you will never, ever set foot in this trailer park, or even this side of Kingman, again. If we ever catch word that you've tried to contact them or hurt them, the debt you owe won't be payable in money or legal fees. It will be payable in silence. Do you understand? Roy understood. He saw the cold, uncompromising seriousness in the eyes of the men surrounding him. He was a small-time bully, and he had stumbled into the presence of true power. The power of men who decided their own fate, and the fate of those who harmed the innocent. Roy nodded dumbly, his fake bravado evaporating into the dry air. As Roy frantically gathered his things, the Bandidos didn't leave. They stood guard. Hammer had Vex call in favors, not for muscle, but for resources. They contacted a local lawyer they knew from past and legitimate dealings to offer free, anonymous legal advice to Ellie's mother on filing a restraining order and navigating the quick divorce process. They ensured she had emergency funds, slipped discreetly into her hand by Vex, insisting it was back pay for a fake job. Their intervention wasn't just about stopping the immediate crisis, it was about ensuring long-term security. When Roy finally slunk out the door, eyes downcast, loading his belongings into a battered pickup, the Bandidos watched until he was gone. Then, without fanfare, they turned back to Ellie and her mother. Hammer spoke the final words of the encounter, his voice still low, but now with a hint of kindness. You two are safe now. Stay safe. If you ever see him, you call us. We ride fast. They didn't wait for thanks. They didn't want any. Their redemption was found in the silence of the now safe trailer, a silence broken only by the quiet unwrapping of a Kit Kat bar. The departure of Roy from trailer lot 47 wasn't just a relief for Ellie and her mother. It was a seismic shift in the emotional landscape of their small, damaged world. The silence that settled after the roar of the Bandidos' engines faded wasn't the heavy, anxious silence they were used to. It was a peaceful, healing quiet. Yet the story doesn't end with a simple eviction. True heroism, the kind the Bandidos practice, often involves establishing a lasting, albeit anonymous, safety net. Hammer, Vex, and Ghost had performed the immediate intervention, but the core issue of sustainability remained. Ellie's mother was financially fragile, reliant on a minimum wage job, and now facing the immediate stress of divorce proceedings and setting up a secure life for her daughter. The threat of Roy returning, though diminished by the Bandidos' warning, still lingered like a bad odor. The club understood that real change required more than just flexing muscle. It required resources and discretion. As they rode out of Kingman and back onto the open road, the Bandidos debated their next steps. This wasn't the kind of action they advertised. Their creed demanded silent protection. Vex, ever the pragmatist, outlined a plan. He used the club's extensive contacts, not just the legitimate ones he'd called earlier, but a network of trusted, non-club associates who owed the Bandidos favors that could be cashed in for kindness. First, they needed to ensure the trailer was secured. Vex contacted a veteran locksmith who specialized in high-security doors. This man, an old friend of the club, showed up later that night, installed a steel security door and heavy-duty locks, all free of charge, of course, paid for by an untraceable transfer from the club's charity fund. For good measure, he also fixed the splintered frame of the original door, making the trailer a fortress against any sudden unwelcome return. Ellie's mother would wake up to a home that felt, for the first time, truly impenetrable. Next was the financial stability. Hammer knew that simply handing over a wad of cash was insulting and temporary. The club had to give her a way to stand on her own 2 feet. Through another anonymous contact, a quiet, respectable owner of a local auto body shop, Vex arranged for Ellie's mother to be offered a better-paying administrative position. The job wasn't given out of pity. Vex made sure the woman's actual skills were assessed and that she was genuinely capable. The difference was the wage, enough to pay the rent, buy decent food, and crucially, afford a little bit of breathing room. She took the job the following Monday, never knowing the true benefactors of her new start. The Bandidos didn't want gratitude. They wanted autonomy for the family. The most delicate part of the operation involved Ellie herself. Ghost, the quiet giant who had offered the Kit Kat, felt an unusual pull toward the girl. He had a deep, personal history with witnessing childhood helplessness, a wound he rarely showed. He knew that physical safety was only half the battle. The psychological trauma needed addressing. The Bandidos, notorious for their fierce independence, had a surprisingly strong, albeit unofficial, relationship with a retired social worker who now ran a small private counseling service for trauma survivors. Hammer reached out, making it clear this was a personal request. The club offered a substantial, no-strings-attached donation to the service, with the condition that one specific, anonymous child, Ellie, be given the best possible care, indefinitely. Ellie started attending sessions a week later, believing her new employer had a generous employee assistance program. She began the slow, quiet process of unpacking the fear she'd been forced to carry. The Bandidos, meanwhile, continued their ride. They were days away, but they established a remote perimeter of protection. They utilized their younger probationary members, the prospects, for routine, discreet surveillance. 2 prospects, on separate bikes and wearing neutral, non-club gear, took shifts passing through the trailer park daily. They never stopped, never spoke to anyone, but their presence was a silent reassurance. If Roy ever dared to show his face again, the alarm would be raised before he could even reach the trailer. This was the Bandidos' style of neighborhood watch, effective, terrifyingly efficient, and utterly untraceable back to the victims. Weeks passed. The Arizona heat began to give way to the more tolerable temperatures of autumn. Ellie was thriving. She was no longer looking down, her shoulders were back, and she was even laughing, a sound her mother hadn't heard in months. The security door on Trailer 47 was simply a heavy door now, not a symbol of fear. Her mother was confident in her new job and finally had the peace of mind to focus on her daughter's well-being. The community, the very people who had looked away, slowly began to treat them with respect, perhaps sensing the quiet strength that now emanated from the trailer. The Bandidos, hundreds of miles away, received a simple coded message from Vex's contact, a one-word update. Stable. That was all they needed. No thanks, no headlines, no public acknowledgement. Their justice was served not in a courtroom or on the 6 o'clock news, but in the heart of a little girl who could now sleep soundly, knowing the terrifying roar of a man's anger had been replaced by the distant, powerful, and protective roar of motorcycle engines. The world sees the leather, the cuts, and the defiant patches, and labels them outlaws. But for Ellie and her mother, those men were the true guardians, the shadowy, uncompromising angels of the highway who rode into a moment of crisis and delivered a powerful, lasting salvation. They proved that sometimes the ones who live outside the law are the only ones willing to enforce the true meaning of justice and compassion. The Bandidos MC rode on, their good deed locked away, a silent testament to the fact that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear patches and ride steel horses, refusing to stay silent when the innocent are being hurt. Their silence on the deed was their honor. Their action was their humanity.